Hey everyone, welcome to episode 9 of Building My Trike. Down here I've glued the cross member for the front axle in. Bit of glue there and a bit of glue on the other side, and there's a few mil gap underneath, so I've just filled it in with glue. Unfortunately, this was too wide and the stance of the bike was too wide, so the wheels were pushed out way too far. So I cut it in half yesterday. Just down the middle I cut it and then took 15 mil off each side. So that reduced the stance by 30 mil. So now the wheel track is about 650 millimeters wide, which gives me plenty more room. Means I don't have to notch out in the corners here for where the wheel's going to be turning, and the wheel sits pretty much smack bang in the middle of these cutouts that I've already made, so I only have to notch just a little bit on either, like just create like a little figure 8 shape for when the wheel turns. So that's good news. It looks a lot better, and it hasn't compromised the strength of it because I put a little bit of glue and carbon over it, and it's solid as. So what I'm going to do now is size up where the cranks are going, and then figure out how I'm going to put a little bit of carbon in here to strengthen this up, and then I can glue the cross member for the boom on, and then carbon all in there, and then sort out the chain line. But I'm still waiting on the idler sprockets to come from America. So I thought it would have come by now. It's been a couple of weeks, but yeah, shipping takes a while sometimes, so I just got to be patient with that. But yeah, we'll get stuck into sizing up the cranks. I've notched out the carbon boom going out to the cranks. I've taken the cranks out of the bottom bracket, taken the bottom bracket out, put a conduit through, and then chalked it up to the correct height and made sure it's level. Then I can also make sure that this is square with the bike just by eyeing it off. It's pretty good. And then I've got a mark in the middle here. I've got marks on either side to make sure this is like mostly aligned. And then I've got the laser line not turned on yet, but it was aligned running directly down the middle of a bike to the existing line that I've put in on the floor, so this one here. So I can line the dot up with the laser line, line the boom up down the bottom, and then make sure that's square and level, and that should give a fairly accurate position for the boom. So now I can glue it in, double check my measurements, come back in an hour, double check my measurements again, and then leave it to go off. So boom is in, this is gluing down here, and that's just resting in there at the moment. And I've got the sprocket in, just so I can check the chain line. So the chain line from the idler up to the sprocket will go above the axle cross arm, and then from underneath I'll have to drill a hole through the cross arm somewhere. So I'll have one hole through here, but that'll be all bogged in and solid and tied into this. And that obviously will change if I swap out to a 80 tooth instead of a 61, and the top will get a lot more clearance as well. So I'll probably make the hole big enough to support both the 80 and the 60 in case I go any size in between there. I got my TerraCycle idlers in the mail today. I got a geared power idler for the front, and sorry, for the drive side, and then return side I've got a nylon or Delrin idler for the return back to the chainring. And down here I've got my old plastic idler, so that'll help with the teeth. It'll help guide the chain in to the correct position because there's no tension on it. Plastic's all right. And then that will go through this tube out to this, and then back up to the crank. And then I've got this one which I've used on one of my old recumbents, and that'll go in here as the drive side. I have to 3D print some little brackets about the thickness of that, so I stuck this underneath and ran the chain through, and you could see that it was about in the middle. So I got a 3D print just some little brackets to hold that on, and then I can just silicone or glue that in place in there. So I've just drilled the hole for the return chain line. You can see it pokes through like that. It doesn't look like it lines up through the camera here, but it does. I tested it with the chain, and I've accommodated for a 61 tooth and an 80 tooth chainring, so that hole's big enough to do both. So you can see the hole's quite close to all the other parts, so there and the bottom. So what I'll do is make a carbon sleeve that goes in, and I can glue that in place, and then when I come to vacuum form this whole area, I'll just lay some carbon just so it like drapes inside that hole, and that'll bond everything in with the hole as well. So I don't have any concern about the structural integrity of it, because you've got the bottom there and the other side that's going to hold everything together, and then you've got the back of it as well. You've got the back holding everything in, that'll be carbon fibered in. And then once I lay the foam, I'll do another layer that wraps around the front but ties that into the back half, and wrap that around and underneath as well, so that whole front section is solid and rigid in with the rest of the existing part that I've already laid. Just put a coat of primer on the plug, and I'm going to just paint it with a bit of rattle can, just normal paint, and that'll give it a gloss finish good enough to be able to put the release agent on. And it's pretty smooth. I've sanded it back, and I reckon that'll give a really good finish for the mold that I'm going to make from that. I've put 2 layers of just rattle can paint on this. As you can see, it's pretty shiny. There's a few scratches and dimples and whatnot in it, but I don't think that's even going to show up once I put the release agent over it, because the release agent will go on quite thick, and then I can go over here, put it down on that surface, lay some carbon on it, and create a mold from this lovely little plug I've done here. So I'm probably going to do that so I can get that done on the weekend, and then next week make the other side of the wheel fairings. This tube here is the bit that goes in the chain idler down there and guides the chain from the derailleur back to the front front crank. And I just 3D printed these little clips to space it off what would be the top of it, to space it like that, so it's at the correct height for running the chain line through in a straight line between the idlers. And as you can see, line it up, clips in nice, got that nice really stiff actually. Squishing it a little bit, but that means it's tight. I've done like an 80% overhang with it, so it will grip it really well without using any clips to hold it in place. So what I'm going to do is glue that in place now, so I don't have to do it later, because once I put it in the bike, I'm going to only have a hole cut through the bottom of the bike where each of the idlers are going, and this bit in the middle is going to be fully enclosed. So you could probably still slide the tube out through one of those holes, but to have these glued in, it's going to have to be glued in like first. So I'm going to have one at either end, like right at either end, so you don't have to like because it was so tight to get in, you don't have to get in and like force it in with your finger too hard. It's going to be a lot easier if it's like right at each end. So I'm going to sort that out now, and I'll show you the mold I made out of that plug. I ended up having to destroy the plug to get the mold out, but that doesn't matter. It's a one-off, and the mold came out absolutely perfect. So here it is. I've just had it sitting out in the sun for a little bit just to dry off, because I had it soaking in water trying to soften the timber up to pop it out of a mold or make it easier to chisel at. So it's just drying off at the moment, but I've got to trim up all these with a bit of a flappy disc, and then trim the edge to probably a 10mm flange, because I'll put the tacky tape on this edge and then have the part come up to here with just a smidgen of overhang. I'm not going to have anywhere near as much overhang as I did on the other one, because I've got a clear defined diameter around here, and that will mean that I get a perfect circular shape. Just gluing the tube in now. Got the chain line lined up in the right spot, and I can make spaces to fit these specific gaps here. So just got to wait till it goes off now. I'm just truing my other wheel over here. I've trued this one, and then I'm going to silicone one side of the disc cover on and get ready to prep the other side. So I've got the carbon cut over there and the mold finished and waxed, and I'm just going to spread the release agent over it now. So that's it for this week's episode. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.